minute or two to make sure that all of the people who are joining can get in and we're not too disturbed by these things popping up on the screen here. Okay, I think that seems to be it. Almost. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Freddie. I'm with the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. Just a few housekeeping bits before we kick off. So first of all, this session is being recorded. And there's a lot of people on the call, so can you please make sure that you're all on mute so we don't get any background noise and or feedback or anything like that. Please can you hold any questions during the initial part of the presentation until we get to the end, because there's going to be a Q&A session. And to participate in that, can you please use the Q&A function, which is part of the Google system. I know a lot of people might not have used the Google system before, but we think it's pretty nifty. And if you go to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see the sort of PlayStation type symbols where you've got the triangle, the square, and the circle. And if you click on that, you'll see that there's a button for Q&A, and you can just ask any questions that you have into the Q&A. And then when we get to the section where we're taking questions, the team will be fielding questions from that Q&A box so that we can answer all of your questions. Right, thanks, Josh. Do you want to go to the next slide? As hopefully you're all clear, this is a briefing event for something called the Future Open Networks Research Challenge, which is a challenge which is being, or a call rather, which is being made to academia and to industry in the UK, set by DCMS. And we are going to take you through what that all means right now. So welcome everyone, and good to see you all here. So first of all, we're going to have Professor Simon Saunders talking through the policy context for why we are making this call, and also going through an overview of what's called the Open Networks Fund, which is a program in DCMS which is funding this challenge. Then I'm going to take us through what the ambitions are for the Future Open Networks Research Challenge, the scope, the objectives, the outcomes, and the outputs which we're looking for under the call. Then Josh is going to take you through how you apply for funding, the timelines and the structure, and things like eligibility criteria and lots of other bits and bobs. Then we're going to be having a Q&A, and then after that we're going to be having a pitching session. So a number of you have sent in some slides, which is great, and you'll have 3 minutes each to make your pitch to other people who you might want to be joining a consortium with. And hopefully we won't have too many more people joining late. Right, thank you. So should we kick off, Simon?
Let's do that. Thanks very much, Freddie, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining this briefing, and it's great to see so many of you expressing an interest in this. What I wanted to do is set the policy context so that you understand where this particular challenge is coming from, and the sort of overall goals that we're trying to achieve through this. That's both, useful general knowledge, I think, but more particularly if you're considering entering this challenge, these will give you a good clue as to some of the things we're listening out for when we're listening to your pitches later in the call, subsequent expressions of interest and proposals. And there is quite a lot of latitude in this program. There's quite a lot of wide range of things that could potentially be eligible, and we want that deliberately to stimulate your creativity in thinking about how your research work could contribute to the outcomes I'm going to run through. That should also mean that you have some sort of breadth of capability that covers this and involves ideas that we won't have thought about. So we don't want to be too prescriptive, but we do want to see some of these objectives threaded through the work that you do. So if we can go on to the next slide. Very broadly, this work fits in with the government's diversification strategy around telecoms infrastructure. And that was set out at the highest level in 2020 in our 5G infrastructure diversification strategy. And that set out some of the criteria and the attributes that we hope to see to ensure that infrastructure market is in a healthy shape and can support the security, the resilience, the innovation, and the sort of commercial health of the market, which contributes to critical national infrastructure that we all depend upon. And that strategy identified 3 core areas that should lead to a healthier market. The first is in working strongly with incumbent suppliers whose equipment and software makes up UK's networks today. It's very important that those suppliers are supported, that they find the UK market attractive, and we hope that they invest in the UK over the long term. Secondly, we also want to attract suppliers into the UK market who may be providing substantial infrastructure around the world, but for one reason or another have played less of a role in the UK market to date. And so we also want them to find the UK market attractive. And then thirdly, we want to accelerate the creation of systems which adopt open interfaces, such that brings an even wider set of suppliers and new opportunities for best of breed solutions, and new players who may not be in the markets at all today. Now, on the last of those, on accelerating open interface solutions, we didn't, in the diversification strategy, set out a lot of detail as to what was really meant and what qualified there. So we felt it was important to set out more principles as to solutions that would qualify for meeting those goals. It isn't about any one standard or any one standards body or any one fixed architecture. It's really some more sort of overarching principles. So we felt the need in April of this year to publish those principles. And I'd invite you to read the detail of that. But there are really 4 key overarching principles, one being open disaggregation, that networks don't have to be provided on an end-to-end basis, but rather those networks can be subdivided into elements which are disaggregated in an open way. That is, they're not subject to a single proprietary route, but there's some architectural principles that everybody can agree on for a given application. Secondly, that in knitting those pieces together to form an end-to-end network, that knitting together should be done on a standards-based approach, so that there are open standards that everybody can work to, and they'll evolve over time. But that means that the individual Lego blocks, if you will, should fit together with less overhead than would otherwise be required. It's not enough simply to have those open standardized interfaces, but there should be a demonstration that those open interfaces really do enable the Lego blocks to fit together, even when they're coming from different suppliers. So we seek actual demonstration of that integrated capability in open laboratory environments, such that the results of that testing become apparent to the market. And then lastly, given all those requirements that we set, however, none of that should preclude innovation. Far from it, it should encourage it. So those interfaces and those standards shouldn't prejudge what the right form of implementation is. There should be plenty of scope for different ways of implementing the same overall architectures. So that's our broad diversification strategy. And the challenge we're sharing today does relate to all of this, but in fact, it sort of builds on that and goes beyond it. So if we can go to the next slide. It's not enough for us to simply say to the industry that we like these things. We actually need to be active participants in stimulating the market. And solutions meeting these goals are being developed internationally, and we're working together with international counterparts on different parts of this vision. And we welcome those inputs from all around the world, and we will need them to create complete solutions for the future. But there is a specific desire to see research and development and deployment done in the UK context. So we want to see a growing and significant share of R&D done by UK researchers, by UK industry, and by investment into the UK by overseas companies. And as part of incentivizing that, we announced last Tuesday this £250 million Open Networks R&D fund. And the ambitions for that are to certainly accelerate the sorts of open interface products and solutions that I've already mentioned, make sure that they are actually performing, are interoperable, are sustainable, are really competitive solutions in the marketplace. That within developing those solutions, that we incentivize companies' desires to base that development in the UK and find ways to de-risk it wherever possible. And for the UK increasingly to play its part in the challenging large-scale international effort to develop those standards in the first place. So really positioning the UK telecoms ecosystem as an internationally recognized element, punching sort of at least at our weight, preferably beyond it. So we're going to emphasize all of that today. So it's not only about diversification, it's also about building UK capability for the future. And you'll be aware that the government has a science and technology superpower approach, recognizing the importance of science and technology, and future telecoms networks is a key plank of that strategy. So let's move on one more slide and explain how today's future open network research challenge fits in to that overall Open Networks R&D fund. So there is a suite of different projects and initiatives, but within that we have today's challenge. Really, most of what we've talked about so far relates to, if you will, the 5G era and to building solutions that fit into today's standards but adopt those open attributes. But we're also very conscious that the industry moves on, and in particular, there's a lot of work going on in many of the institutions that are on this call today on defining the early stages of 6G and on evolving 5G to be even more efficient and more performant. And we think it's really important that those principles are embedded now, such that over the long term they become more of a feature of networks, rather than, for example, us having to return to these themes after 6G is deployed. So this has a slightly longer term viewpoint, making sure that that openness and interoperability is sustainable and embeds the UK's contribution to that. So the principles that I mentioned before were set up as Open RAN principles, but if you take a look at them, there's nothing in them that is really specific or limited to only the RAN. So this is really about open networks, you know, on an end-to-end basis for the future, including but not limited to the RAN. So we want to see those principles threaded through all of the work that's done. Secondly, we do want to develop this UK telecoms ecosystem as part of the wider international effort. That involves us incentivizing investment, notably by the existing large vendors, whether they're already playing a strong role in the UK networks or whether they're doing that overseas for other operators. And we want them to see the UK as a great place to do research, to do development, and to help to build those networks. Secondly, the telecoms industry is full of standards and it's full of intellectual property. Very challenging environment, very difficult to do at small scale, and that means that we need to invest to help researchers and companies play their role within that. So in your work in this challenge, we'd like you to really think about how you would turn that into intellectual property and turn it into standards over time. What I do want to say, though, is that this is just one step, and this isn't everything that we're going to be doing that has relevant to 6G. We're working currently within DCMS and with other agencies such as EPSRC on developing the government's 6G vision and a strategy to help achieve that vision. And we are looking at a more holistic program of funding to cover an even wider range of 6G technology issues. And we'll return to that later this year. So please see it in that context. Today's announcement isn't all that there will be under the 6G banner. Nevertheless, what we do hope is that the collaborations, the consortia that come together for this Future Open Networks research challenge will form the nucleus of collaborations that we hope will grow into and interact with the future 6G funding initiatives. So I hope that sets the context appropriately, and I'll pass back to Freddie to say a bit more about how we'd actually encourage you to participate in this challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. So I think you can actually just go straight through to the next slide, Josh. So the Future Open Networks Research Challenge, as Simon has said, has quite a specific objective, which is to embed the principles of openness and interoperability in future network architectures and technologies, thereby ensuring that the sustainability of open networks beyond the 5th generation of telecommunications. So it's all about looking towards the future of open networks and us coming to you to help to create the technologies which are going to ensure that that openness and interoperability becomes sustainable as future networks develop. You might have noticed that we're calling this a challenge rather than a competition as well. Typically, DCMS in the past under, for example, the 5G testbeds and trials program, which you may have heard of, ran things which we called competitions. But we're calling this a challenge because typically our competitions had quite a broad sort of remit that was looking at stimulating competition in the market, whereas we're taking a slightly different approach here, one where, you know, we have this very, very specific challenge, which we think, you know, academia and industry needs to come together to collaborate on in order to co-develop solutions to a shared problem which exists across the ecosystem. And we see that partnership as really, really key to success. Also, there's a process which we're going to be going through called an expression of interest, which is optional, and Josh is going to talk about it a little bit later. But in a nutshell, we're going to be giving you the opportunity to come to us with your early thoughts about what you think the best way of meeting this challenge is. And then we can be providing some feedback to you as well, which is slightly different to how we would normally do a competition, and more in line with how challenges which are funded by the government often work. So thanks, Josh. And next slide, please. So the way which we do funding calls in government is that we ask for you to provide us with a proposal which meets a certain kind of grouping of requirements. One is around scope, which you can see on the screen here. Then we have outcomes and outputs and objectives as well. So we define what those are, and then you have to come to us and explain how your proposal fits into what the call is asking for. For this challenge, it's actually quite high level. As we've said, we're looking for you to come to us with your proposal, but we have got some sort of broad requirements. So first of all, the research needs to be at quite a low but quite a broad set of TRLs. So everything from 1, which is obviously the most fundamental, up to 5. We need you to be doing R&D which is focused on network technology rather than applications. So it's not sort of 5G use cases and that kind of thing. It's very technology focused. We need you to be looking at the performance and manageability. Sorry, we need to be looking at how you can enhance the performance and manageability of interoperable networks. And we also need to be getting you to look at the impact of open disaggregation. So what is that going to mean for future networks once you have open disaggregation across the networks? What are the impacts of that going to be? And then also, as Simon said, we need you to be abiding by the Open RAN principles which we've set out. And if you don't know what those are, you can actually just Google Open RAN principles DCMS, and it will come up straight away and it will explain everything about that. So that is the scope. Thanks, Josh. On to the objectives. So firstly, as we've said, we want to fund technology that will create a sustainable pathway towards open networks as future telecoms architectures develop. And to achieve this, we need to say something about standards, which is why it's one of our key objectives here. We need to ensure that the research which is done under this funding has an influence on the development of standards. And that's why we're asking you to provide us with an IP plan. If you look at the requirements, which Josh will go through, we need an IP plan. And that should ensure that more patents are filed in the UK, which can contribute to standards and will ensure that the UK has a stronger voice at things like standards development organizations. And we think that this is a really great way of helping to get us there. And that also ties into UK capability as well, which is a top priority for DCMS. And to achieve this, we think there's a few things that you can do. So we're going to be asking you to work with the large major RAN vendors. And we also think that you should be looking to involve other stakeholders from across the telecoms and wider digital ecosystem, such as network operators, SMEs, other things like RTOs and wider industry as well. And finally, we also need you to be helping us develop a UK vision. And what we mean by that is working across government with DCMS, all the various research initiatives which we fund, UK research and innovation, and various other organs across government as well, to kind of build what the UK's kind of what the UK's vision for future networks and 6G is going to look like, and help us to shape that. And this should all help ensure that the UK has a really strong foothold at the intersection of future networks and open networks research and development. Thank you. So on to the outcomes, Josh. So there's quite a few here, and if you look at the guidance as well, you'll see that there's a long list of outcomes. And what we do is we essentially kind of rate and benchmark first of all your proposals, and then also the performance of your projects when they're in flight against these outcomes, and they're really, really important. So first of all, we require you to ensure that your research boosts the leadership of your institutions in the fields of future networks and interoperable telecoms technology. Okay. We need to see an increase in the level of maturity of future-facing technologies, which can form part of future telecoms architectures. We'd like to see a greater number of telecoms patents created, as I was just talking about, which are then used to support the development of a more robust R&D sector and a growing telecoms industry. We need to see greater engagement and participation within standards bodies, as I was saying, from UK companies and academic institutions. We also would like to see more collaboration between researchers and vendors of all sizes on open and interoperable networks, and ensure that that collaboration has taken place by the end of the funding. We would like to see a greater retention of PhDs and postdoctoral researchers working within the UK telecoms industry, because sometimes those researchers can do the research here and then go abroad, and the IP and the kind of skills and capability aren't retained in the UK, and that's something which we're trying to tackle with this funding. We also would like to see greater domestic and international investment in telecoms R&D in the UK as one of the outcomes of this funding as well. And we would like you to identify the current state of the art in terms of academic research, as well as what various competitors are doing in this space as well, and the development of relevant standards, as I was saying. So broadly speaking, those are the outcomes. Those are the key outcomes. If you look at the guidance there's actually a bit more detail, but some of them cross over one another. But if this is kind of the these are the main areas, right, that we're looking for. But I would look at the guidance and look at it in more detail when you're writing your applications. Okay. And then finally onto the outputs. So what we're saying about outputs is really, really important as well, because prior to launching this challenge, many of you will have participated in a workshop, and we did lots of engagement to try and work out what the best way of doing this was. And what we found, I think, is that it's actually best if we leave the specifics around what kind of products and solutions you're going to develop up to you. So we've set this kind of broad, high-level vision and the principles which we want you to fulfill, and the challenge which we want you to meet. However, the specific ways in which you do that, and the products and the kind of research topics and themes which you do your research on, we're leaving that up to you. So it can be any future architecture or a concept or technology, or even building a prototype or anything like that. And we think that you, academia working with industry, are actually best placed to define what that is, rather than government. So we hope that you understand why that is, and we hope that you agree that that's the best way of doing this. Because we thought long and hard about this, and we felt that was by far and away the best way of meeting these objectives, by working with you. So thanks very much, and that's it from me. So Josh, over to you now, I think.
Thanks, Freddie. Good morning, everyone. My name's Josh. I also work at DCMS with Freddie. I'll be bringing you some information about the application timelines and structure of the challenge. So what you can see here is a timeline of the key steps for the challenge from the launch through to when we expect delivery of the grant funding to begin. There's a dedicated email address that you can send questions to, which I'll share at the end of this segment. The inbox will be open for questions until the week before the challenge closes, so that we have time to respond and publish any final questions. So you should be aware that the deadline for the expression of interest, which I'll explain a little bit more about later, is 12 p.m. noon on the 12th of August, not at the end of the day. The deadline for any full proposals is 12 p.m. noon on the 3rd of October. Deadline timings are not close of play. Having said that, we do ask that you aim to send us your application days before the deadline at the latest, as it can sometimes be more complex than you think to send us all of the required documentation. If you do try and send us your application over on the deadline, there's a huge risk that you'd be submitting your application late, so please try and get the documents to us as early as possible. It'll then take us some time for the assessment panel to assess the bids. This will take place in the weeks following the closure of the challenge. We then expect the successful applicants will be notified the week commencing 31st of October, at which point we'll begin mobilisation and entering the GFA. So as mentioned previously, there's an EOI as part of the application. This is the first submission of the application window, and interested participants are invited to submit high-level proposals. So within the EOI response, applicants should detail who's going to form part of the consortium, what research the consortium aims to carry out, and how it will meet the objectives of the challenge, an approximate figure of any funding required, and an indication of how much time would be required to deliver the proposal. So whilst having a large round vendor as either a partner, subcontractor, or otherwise involved in the consortium is a condition of the final challenge, an agreement doesn't need to be in place at the EOI stage, but it will be expected to be provided with the full proposal. Once EOIs have been received, we will review and provide high-level written feedback. Participants will then be invited to attend an individual verbal feedback session with a panel of representatives from DCMS. The intention of the EOI is to review and feedback to ensure that the early stage thinking is properly aligned with the scope and objectives of the challenge. Feedback received during these sessions is designed to be suggestive and is not indicative of either a positive or negative outcome. Participants are able to submit a full proposal even if they don't submit an EOI. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to some detail about how to apply. There are 3 areas to be aware of. So I'll be covering key points about the application process, the amount of funding that's available, and the eligibility criteria and subsidy control, which are very much linked. So you must submit all the required documents to be eligible for assessment. This must be done by the lead partner. The first thing we'll do is check this, and there's a checklist in the guidance, which I'll run through in a moment. The lead applicants will be notified by DCMS of the funding decision of the project after they've been assessed by our panel. All eligible and in-scope applications will receive feedback from our panel. And finally, we expect it'll take about 2 months to mobilise and sign an agreement for grant funding with the winning competition, with the winning organisation. And now I'll move on to funding. So I think the key message here is that there's up to £25 million available over the 24-month long projects. DCMS will make available grant funding ranging from 4 million to 12 million to individual projects. This will help balance the outcomes you claim you can deliver against the cost. So we will be doing a value for money assessment on this. Of course, you must evidence that you meet the subsidy control requirements of the grant. You must also evidence that you can capitalise all the funding. It's important to remember that all the funding must be treated as capital grants. And DCMS also reserves the right to vary the funding awarded to successful applicants, depending on factors such as the number and the quality of proposals received. So now I'm going to move on to eligibility. So as you can see, there's a lot of detail here. And as mentioned, this is all in the guidance. So please go away and read the guidance in detail. The key points, as mentioned, that you must apply as a single university or a consortium composed of a university and any other UK registered organisation. The lead applicant must be a UK registered university. You can't apply it as an individual, either as a lead partner or a general partner. The grant can't be more than half of your annual income over 3 years. If you are applying as a consortium, you will need to sign a collaboration agreement between your partners before you receive any grant. There's a template of the grant funding agreement on the website. and only UK registered organisations can receive funding. Further to this, the lead applicant or consortium should be able to demonstrate delivery at an international level. Individual organisations are allowed to apply as part of more than one consortia bid. And finally, we will conduct rigorous due diligence, which I hope you all expect. Now I'm going to move on to subsidy control. So as I'm sure you know, subsidy control is a regulation which ensures that the government does not manipulate markets and prevent fair competition. So the subsidy intensity is dependent upon the subsidy control approach the project chooses. These requirements are set out in the guidance, but you will be required to obtain your own independent subsidy control legal advice. And when required to do so, commit to sharing that advice with DCMS and its professional advisors. This can be a complex area, so if you do have questions about this, please email the inbox and we'll clarify your questions with our subsidy control department. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to standards and IP and patents. So these play a significant role within the challenge. Projects funded under the challenge are expected to contribute to meeting the challenge's standards and IP objectives, which are detailed in the guidance. A brief summary of these objectives is as follows. So consortia are expected to develop an IP plan for creation, retention and dissemination of IP and explain how this plan will achieve the challenge's objectives. The IP plan also aims to enable researchers to file patents under open and agreeable terms. They must comply with relevant legislation and subsidy control rules regarding IP, demonstrate the ability to protect the integrity of intellectual property and sensitive information, actively engage with government-sponsored research, translation and commercialization efforts, both when these are established and as they evolve. It should also be noted that if projects intend to file patents, this will have to be done without the support of grant funding, and projects must instead rely on the resources of stakeholders to file patents. Further information regarding standards, IP and patents is available in the guidance, so please go away and look at this in detail, as this is a key aspect of the challenge. Okay, so some information regarding required documentation. So what you can see on the screen is a list of required documents which you must submit in order to be eligible for funding. Again, this is all in the guidance and on the application form, so please ensure you check through this list when it comes to writing your bid. You need to fill out the whole application form, answer all of the questions and fill out the finance summary tables at the end. You need to sign up to the terms of the participation agreement, provide 2 years of latest accounts, as well as an appendix setting out a resourcing plan, project cost per milestone and spend profile. So I hope this was helpful. And as I said, everything is in the guidance, so please refer to that if you need to. If you have any questions, you can please feel free to send me an email at omp.inquiries@dcms.gov.uk and someone from the team will pick it up. If they can't answer it straight away, they'll pass it on to a relevant team and they'll get you an answer. As mentioned, your questions will be aggregated and added to a Q&A log, which will be updated weekly on our website. For anything commercially sensitive, we'll work with you to ensure we have removed details you don't want to share. And that's it for me. Thanks, everyone. Links to the slides will be provided afterwards, as well as the readout for the Q&A. I'll now hand back over to Freddie, who'll be leading on the Q&A. So Freddie, over to you.
Thanks very much. So we've got a few questions here. And I'm going to start with the large RAN vendor question. So the question is, can you please expand on the definition of a large RAN vendor? So first of all, what I would say is, obviously, there are a couple of very large ones, which are often called incumbents, and obviously they are they would be covered by that definition. But there's also a few other large ones, such as NEC and Fujitsu and and Samsung and those kind of companies. But I think what we would say is that we aren't sort of prescribing or defining like anything based on things like what their revenue is or market share or anything like that. It's just it's quite a sort of loose definition. So you're free to kind of partner and pick who you think are most appropriate for the objectives of the challenge and the context which we're working under. But it's not like a kind of hard definition. It's kind of more in a general sense. So the next question is the scope of the challenge limited to radio access technology? We would work on opening up and disaggregating the core fixed network. Is that also in scope? So I think, as Simon said, we're actually not limiting it just to the RAN. So it's the whole end-to-end system which is in scope here. So I think the answer to your question is yes. Your proposal would be in scope. Is that right, Simon?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, if I can just expand on that, so it's understandably potentially confusing because it is a large RAN vendor that we're expecting to be supporting the project, but the actual content of the project can span networks much more generally. I mean, I would say that there's a lot of challenge in the RAN, which is why that's been an area of concentration to date. But this is about looking forward and thinking about different network architectures where, you know, perhaps even the distinction between the RAN and the core may not be so sharply defined. So, you know, as long as the general principles that we set out, which say Open RAN principles, but can be interpreted to mean the whole of the network, as long as those are threaded through the work that you're proposing to do, then it could be viable. You know, it should move forward the debate, if you like. It should make that open interoperability. It should facilitate that open interoperability in some sense. So, you know, if you were looking at a project that was only in the core, for example, as the questioner has suggested, you'd have to, I think, identify and make the case for why you see dominant interoperability challenges in that domain. But otherwise, I think, you know, anything is possible. However, it is a networks challenge, so it's not, for example, about end user applications and services primarily. It's really about the network.
Thanks, Simon. There's also one more thing I wanted to say about the first question that we had as well about large RAN vendors. I can be slightly more specific about it, which would be to say that we're looking for vendors which are currently deployed in UK mobile operator networks, as well as those who have capacity to deploy into the UK's public networks at scale. And also those which are shaping future networks as well, and those which are likely to have a significant contribution to the standards which are going to underpin future networks. Okay, so I hope that helps. Next question, would the National Physical Laboratory be able to lead the project as an RTO? If you look at the requirements, it has to be a university which leads. So NPL, I'm afraid, wouldn't be able to be the lead partner, but you could partner with a university. Alistair Burr, I think I'm not quite clear what your question means exactly. I don't know if you can come off mute and clarify. Okay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I just thought I heard something you said suggesting that there could be only one university involved in one consortium. So it couldn't be a consortium of several universities and a few other industry. Was that what you meant or not?
No, so I think what that meant was you can apply as a university on your own, provided that you're also partnering with a large RAN vendor as, for example, a subcontractor. But essentially what that means is that you don't have to be a consortium, because a consortium by definition means two partners or more who are both investing in the project, right? Or if it's a university, you can potentially receive 100% funding, but you know, you're still a fully signed up partner. So you can apply on your own as a single university, or you can apply as a consortium of universities and companies. So you don't want to shut anyone out. If there's a university out there which just wants to apply alone, then that's absolutely fine. But a large consortium of universities is also fine.
Thanks, that clarifies.
Great. So there's a question about the estimated cost in the EOI. Is this binding? No, so it's not binding at all. First of all, the EOI is optional, and secondly, we really just want to get a ballpark figure. We're not going to be holding you to that. So if it changes significantly, because the EOI is quite early on in the process, we recognize. So if it changes significantly, that's fine. It's not binding. There's a question here which says, please summarize cost recovery for academia, large industry and SMEs. Do we have Dale on the call to answer that question?
Yeah, I'm here. I think that the answer isn't going to be the most helpful one in that it depends. The advice that we've put out with regards to state subsidy is that we want the lead partner to take a view of what subsidy regime this would fit in. If you are including large vendors in it, it is highly likely that this would be a sort of experimental development type approach, and that would have kind of 40, 50 and 60% for the undertakings and 80% for the universities. If it's purely a university approach, your solicitors might look at what you're bidding and say that they consider this to be a no subsidy approach. And if you can demonstrate that to us, you'd be able to recover at 100%. But most universities are very used to the 80-20 model anyway.
Okay, hope that helps. The next one might be for you, Dale, as well, actually. Dale, by the way, everyone, is our commercial lead, so leads on all things commercial contracts and grants and all of that stuff. So the question is, are there fixed caps for funding of eligible costs for industry members?
I think it's very much refer back to the previous answer. So it depends on the subsidy approach taken. Generally, large companies in previous grants that we've awarded are 40%, medium size 50%, and smaller companies 60%. But that could vary if the subsidy approach you've taken was based on a different categorization. So rather than experimental development, it could be industrial development, which I think attracts a slightly higher level of subsidy for the industrial partners.
Okay, thank you. Does IP filed under the funding remain in ownership of the organizations that file it? Generally speaking, and I think Dale, maybe you can answer a bit more about this, but generally speaking, we leave the IP exploitation and commercialization model up to you. So that forms part of your collaboration agreement, for example, if you're in a consortium, and we don't sort of make really prescribed requirements about that. However, you will also notice in the guidance and in everything that we've been talking about that we're looking to have more IP in the UK, and if you're a university, I think the IP would be retained in the university, provided that you file it and patent it in all the ways that we were talking about. The consortium must be led by a university, or a university can be a member of the consortium. So I think the answer to both of those questions is yes. So the consortium must be led by a university, but then you can also have other universities partnered with that university as the lead. So only one of them has to be the lead. Can you please detail topics related to new development IP ownership? Rudy, do you think that you can explain that question a little bit? Because I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, thank you. I believe you answered already. It was mainly related to ownership, of IP, if it belongs, to the UK entity that filed it.
Okay. Yeah.
No, thank you.
No worries. The proposal template mentions some maximum word counts per field, but is there an expected length of proposals? So do you mean when you say the length of proposal, do you mean how many words the total?
Yeah, yes, yeah. I mean, so there are some maximum. I mean, when I looked at the template, it says like maximum 500 words, 1,000 words, or whatever. I mean, I'm trying to ask the question: is this considered to be like a target? Are you expecting about half that length? I mean, and so I mean, are we talking about a 50-page proposal or a 10-page proposal? I mean, what's your rough expectation?
Oh, I see. Right. I mean, generally speaking, when we receive bids, they use all the word count available for each question. So I don't think there isn't really a difference between the overall length of the bid and the word count.
Okay, fine. So just to clarify, you say normally people use the maximum word count. So an average proposal would consume all of the words that are so it's almost like a target. So.
Yeah, effectively, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is it correct IP filing costs are not permissible expenses? So Josh, I think that was in your camp, right?
I mean, I can answer that as well. IP filing costs aren't permissible expenses, generally speaking, because they don't really fit into the categories of subsidy, and they're not fundamental to the research itself. They're sort of additional commercial benefit for the parties involved.
Howard, your question about 40% funding for large vendors. So I'm afraid there still remains nothing we can do about subsidy control legislation. However, you'll see that there are a few different ways in which large vendors can be involved. So the subcontracting model is acceptable. So if you want to subcontract your products and services to a university, then collaborate with them in whatever way works for you. Then that's fine. In which case, I think what our understanding is from vendors such as Samsung and Nokia and Ericsson and the other large vendors is that that will work for this piece of work, and that while it doesn't solve the issue which you're talking about, we think it's a pretty good midpoint. I don't know if anyone else on the call wants to say anything about that on our side.
I mean, the only thing that I'd say about that is that there are questions related to value for money, and organisations being involved in putting some of their own money where their mouth is will strengthen the answer on those. But it's not an absolute requirement, as Freddie says.
What is the maximum funding per project? 12 million pounds is the maximum. And then the second question is very neatly related to that. Is there a minimum spend per project? And that would be 4 million pounds. And do we have any more questions? That looks like that's it. In which case we can move on to the next section, which is the pitching sessions. So I hope everyone's ready. Josh is going to show us who we've got presenting to us today.
Yeah, so first up, we've got Jet Engineering System Solution Limited. Is anyone available on the call?
We've got your slides up here, so you don't need to worry about that. So Josh, I think if you go to the next slide. Yeah, there we go.
I'll just come off mute on this one, chaps. Is that all right?
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks.
And you've got 3 minutes.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks ever so much for letting us get a chance to speak to everyone today. So we're a fairly young business and we're focusing on building floating networks. And I think one of the things that's really exciting here is there's a lot of use cases where this could be reapplied to other sectors, certainly on land, rural communities, developing nations, etc. But it's basically rugged, low cost 5G that we're looking at building. So this is a floating base station that we put to sea. Like I say, we've come on a journey. And when I say we've come on a journey, we formed the business in 2020, and we were very fortunate to receive the support of the DCMS, including having the minister down there. Can we get the next slide, please? And what was really exciting with that is we built floating N28 and N78 on a standalone 5G. Matt Warman came down and had a look at what we were doing, and that was really, really positive to see, actually, as part of the 5G Rural Dorset. So we launched the business, kicked off the R&D, and we developed our own UEs to build this sort of floating concept. We then worked through our business case of what we needed to do. So we've now got our own CUDU core and UE, and we're now working across the offshore wind and security sectors. One of the things we're looking to do is partner with universities. I think for us today, this is all about how do we get the right partners involved. Can I get the next slide, please? What we're trying to do is create a vision, and the vision we've got is ubiquitous connectivity at sea, neutral network hosted, using floating base stations. You can probably see the size of the kit that we've been building. So the trestle's about waist height. So it's about a ton of asset per buoy. This was supported by the DCMS. We've got a lot of things we need to go and do in the technology world, and we want to find the right universities to partner with to enable us to take that further forward. There's a lot of universities that have got some really exciting concepts and ideas, and we'd like to be the sort of the next stage on that journey in terms of how do we move that forward. So if we can go to the next slide, please. We're seeking two things really, university partners, as I said, and major RAN vendors, someone to partner with that can help us commercialize the IP that we've got and some of our routing algorithms, some of the technology we've done. We want to deliver an open RAM neutral network hosted at sea, providing sort of interoperability and a fiberless connection at sea. So that's us and some of the team. We've got a few more now since we took the photo a few months ago. I think there's 16 of us in the team now. But as a 2-year-old business, we'd love to find some partners from today. So next slide, please. Feel free to reach out to myself or Izzy, and we'd love to hear more about what we could do together. Thank you so much for letting us present for 3 minutes.
Thank you for that. Next up, we have King's College London. Is anyone from King's College on the call?
I'm here, Josh Stockman.
Yep, no worries.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's a very brief introduction, and I'm pretty sure that a majority of colleagues here are familiar with our institution. So I'm briefly introducing the activities of Center for Telecom Research in the Department of Engineering at King's College London. And can we go to the next slide, please? We are one of the, as many of you might know, one of the oldest telecom center for excellence in the UK, and currently have 10 academic staff, around 100 researchers. We have done extensive contribution to various to previous generation of mobile network scientific contribution, but also extensive innovation and standard contribution, as well as proof of concepts. And we led some of the first in the world proof of concept demonstrations, in particular in the 5G research. We are one of the founding members of the 60 Futures, together with the University of Bristol and University of Strathclyde. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So in the Strand campus, we host a 5G programmable network and tactile internet testbed. And throughout the 5G research, we have developed and pioneered the concept of Internet of Skills that allowed us to basically develop networking technologies for a number of applications, which if you can go to the next slide, please. Major one that I can speak here were in telehealth, remote surgery, connected ambulance, and remote ultrasound, in a project called Connected Culture, which King's has an extensive work on that. But as an example, we worked on a 5G music event, and in emergency services and a connected drone, and all of them. There are resources available on King's website, all of them, and I provided a link to those in the final slides. If you can go to the next slide, please. Yes, okay, so this is the final slide with all the links of CTR, and some more resources on Internet skills in a paper. The second link, the third one gives a bit of a more detail into the connected culture on 50 Future. And if anybody wants to any further information, my email address is in the bottom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Lancaster University. Is there anyone on the call from Lancaster University?
Is that working? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Hi, I'm a research associate here at part of the network researching group. I'm just going to start off with a bit of background on our previous research, which revolves around full stack monitoring and valuation on large scale collaborative projects. Some of these projects were parts of the DCMS 5G testbed and trials program, 5Grid in phase 1 and Mobile Access North Yorkshire in phase 2. And as part of this, we developed a holistic monitoring framework, which enables us to best capture performance, but also impact at the sort of the novel 5G network technologies on the end user. Cool. So next slide, please. So this is the monitoring framework that we developed as part of 5Grid and many. We split it into 3 layers: the physical layer, which is the passive monitoring of performance parameters provided by the vendors and the network devices, using such as signal strength, modulation scheme, coding scheme, power quality, power signal to noise ratio. Next layer up is these things such as jitter, the application layer, the end user QE metrics. So this is where we look at video streaming usually, as it's a great indicator of quality of experience. Sorry, next slide. And finally, of a real world implementation of our is the great thing about it is it's completely open source and totally flexible to whatever parameters that we're able to collect. Real-time KPIs in this instance. We've got throughputs and like some physical layer statistics. What's really is that with this data set and collaboration, we were able to provide performance. We can determine the origin of issues when they occur. This can vary if it's environmentally related, which is quite difficult to measure in rural use cases. Cool. If it's a user sort of issue. We've also managed to capture the impact of adverse weather conditions. We've managed to capture when there's been loss of performance to misconfiguration of the infrastructure, but also we've managed to find out, if it's simply as congestion as response to the issues, so being able to differentiate between this all. From me, thank you very much. There's some contact details at the bottom there on the slide. If you're interested in getting in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Queen's University Belfast are up next. Anyone from Queen's?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
So, yes, so I'm Aisha, and I'm a lecturer at the Center for Secure Information Technologies at the Queen's University in Belfast. We are a UK IKC for cybersecurity, and we are working on a scalable, quantum-safe, hierarchical, identity-based encryption. So if you go to the next slide, please. So what is IBE? So IBE is simply an advanced form of public key cryptography that allows an identifier's unique identity simply to be taken up instead of its public key. So while traditional certification authorities require significant enrollment overhead, IBE is much more simple. So consider, for example, 2 autonomous vehicles in constant contact with 5G network. So the key generator as a precursor, as a preload, already has produced the private keys for all the cars using their registration numbers. Now, if the green car here needs to send a message to the blue car, all it needs is its registration number to enable an authenticated message delivery. And the blue car would need only the private key to get the message. because there is an associated private key that that it would have access to. So this would ensure very quick setup of communication between Alice and Bob. So there are some negativities associated with it, and they are the fact that this private key generation, although it's a one-time activity, could be quite computationally intensive. And secondly, it would be a single point of failure because all of it would be computed together. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So we have tried to solve both of these problems. So QUB and CSIT together with QUB, CSIT, and NCSC have jointly developed a hierarchical IBE that is also quantum safe in its nature. So what does it mean? It comes with two killer features. First of all, it's hierarchical, which means that we can generate a fine-grained access control within an organization. Also, in case of a key management system compromise, the damage would be much limited. And also the key generators workload is much reduced now. The second feature is that this is quantum safe in its nature because this IBE is built on top of the lattice-based crypto systems that are, by their definition, safe against the quantum computers' attacks. So if you go to the next slide, please. So in collaboration with Thales UK, we wish to deploy a citywide security infrastructure that can facilitate a wide range of 5G applications in remote healthcare, smart metering, connected vehicles, and e-government that could illustrate the capability of quantum safe scalable IBE system. So there was some contact information in the very first slide. I didn't put in on the last slide, but yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have the Smart Wireless Innovations Facility. Anyone on the call from SWIFT?
Yeah, is Graham Bolton from SWIFT. So good morning, everybody. We'd just like to introduce SWIFT, the Smart Wireless Innovation Facility. Next slide, please. Thank you. So SWIFT is a new organisation. It's a £1.6 million investment by D2N2, the Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire Local Enterprise Partnership, and Nottingham Trent University. It's a commercial organisation focused on 5G and LoRaWAN testbed. The purpose really is to help industry develop, trial and commercialise innovative solutions based around 5G and IoT. The use of the lab can be as a living lab, you know, from concept all the way through to commercialisation, to safely trial and develop solutions in a real world environment to and also with access to our highly skilled small team to kind of support them. It's an opportunity to actually do research with access to NTU, Nottingham Trent University academics. SWIFT's technical specialists are available for joint commercial research or grant funding. Part of the funding has enabled us to have not only our own 5G and LoRaWAN test beds, but we actually have our own electronics workshop in there as well. And some of the work we've recently been doing is around IoT and developing our own sensors there. So if you have the next slide, please. The details of the test bed is we have a non-standalone test bed and a standalone test bed. We've got 5G NR on band 78, NB IoT service. We have Nokia 4G and 5G indoor and outdoor with the core. On our standalone test bed, we have AirSpan with a Druid core as well. Next slide, please. This slide is just showing you where we've got the 5G base stations deployed on the NTU Clifton campus. Two deployments, one at the engineering lab and one at the other end of the concourse. So we have a real, as close to a real world 5G deployment as possible. I've skipped through that really quickly. Don't know whether I've got to my 3 minutes, but I think the last slide just shows a contact there. So I'll put my contact details in the chat, but you can also contact Stuart Fenton at ntu.ac.uk. Whilst we're funded by the Nottingham Trent University, we're not looking to be a lead. We're looking to be part of a consortium that can take advantage of the testbed facilities we've got. So thank you very much for the time to present.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have the Original Content Company. Is anyone on the call from the Original Content Company?
Yes, I am.
Brilliant. Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, do you want to just go forward on the slide?
Sure.
There seems to be someone's watermark on there. Hi, I'm Matt from the Original Content Company, and in 2020 we led a consortium of 3 other SMEs along with Coventry University to create the world's first proof of concept medical VR teaching platform, which had content delivered across a 5G standalone network. The proof of concept was funded by Vodafone, with Ericsson doing the installation of the 5G network. We created a Mech, which was built with high-end NVIDIA cards, and it was the first global commercial use of NVIDIA Cloud XR. What the 5G enabled us to do was high-end fidelity graphics with lower latency of the subject matter, with the lecturer being able to go inside the body, and then this was all streamed over 5G to the students on the different mobile devices. Could we go to the next slide, please? What we're looking for is basically collaborators to help build like the next metaversities. First one to say metaverse on the call. So for 5G ready content. So this is coming from like being a network aware education system. So what we're looking for is universities, network suppliers to partner with us to build out this education platform on that. So we have great relationships with EE, Vodafone, Ericsson, NVIDIA, and VMware already. Next slide, please. We believe that there is a great opportunity here of within the market, within the XR training and educational market. This can go across various subject matters. And yeah, we're open to the Open RAN principles, which is embedded right from the start, from the ideation of the content that we're looking to create. So yeah, next slide. So here are my contact details, is if anyone is interested in any collaboration in any way, shape or form. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to present.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have the University of Glasgow.
Hello, hi, I'm Mohammed Imran. So if you go to next slide, I can start presenting. Thank you. So we are a research group of more than 125 researchers working in communication, sensing, and imaging, both in devices, protocol stack, and solutions. If you go to next slide, please. So the main area in open network related research within our group include our involvement in DCMS-funded Compo RAN project from the FRANC competition, where we are developing coordinated multi-point algorithms and also simulating them as well as implementing them with our partners into the Open RAN protocol stack. We are also working on system integration with various devices. So we have a test bed based on Open RAN solutions. We were part of EPSRC funded reorder project. We have done end-to-end network slicing and its implementation in Open RAN. Working closely with some other partners, we are developing dynamic spectrum management algorithms in our Open RAN protocol stack. Next slide, please. So one of the other interesting area that we have recently started working on is implementing security and privacy preservation in Open RAN networks. Some of the privacy preserved algorithm using blockchain and distributed ledger technologies that have been developed at Glasgow, we are trying to implement them on the Open RAN protocol stack for real life applications, as well as the new secure and privacy preserved network architectures. Next slide, please. So based on all these different areas that we are involved in, alongside a Scotland 5G centered on-campus testbed, we are implementing not just the algorithms, but we are trying to make the impact through standardization activities. Just to give you a summary about our work over the last 6 years, we have developed around 35 patents. 20 of them are at international level. We have contributed to standardization activities both in HC as well as in 3GPP standardization. We have also got direct funding from a lot of vendors as well as tier 1 network operators. Founding member of Scotland 5G Centre, national level centre for promoting 5G related activities. Funded by EPSRC for program grants, as well as 2 large projects, Reorder and Reduce project. And last but not least, we are the academic coordinator for CompoRAN project, which was successfully secured in the previous TCMS competition, FRANC. Next slide, please. For the contact, I can type in my email address in the chat here, so anyone can contact with us. Very happy to work collaboratively with industrial partners as well as other academic partners as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have the University of Sheffield.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. So I'm just going to mention our software-defined radio facilities and research. So that's an introductory slide. So please move to the next one. Okay, so basically just say that we are a radio systems research group. We're about 11 academics, 60 researchers. We research across antennas, RF circuits, direct digital acquisition, physical layer signal processing, and medium access control. The work is primarily aimed at software-defined radio solutions for mobile networks, but extends to Wi-Fi as well. And a particular skill which complements these activities, we have expertise in computer modeling and KPI evaluation of energy efficient RANs, small cell RANs, and now open RANs. So if we move to the next slide. Okay, so some of our facilities, let me just unpack the first bullet point. I say we have a 5G physical layer test bed covering FR1 and 2. Actually, we've got 2 of those lab-based, and we work with FONRC on their 5G Factory of the Future, which is now a wonderful facility that's just come online. We have 2 instrumented anechoic chambers to support our measurements, and we host the UKRI National Millimetre Wave Facility, for which there's some pictures there on the top right-hand side. And currently, as many of you actually on the call know, I'm bidding into the EPSRC for strategic equipment grant, and we're trying to move up to the sub-terahertz frequencies to look at software-defined radio testbed facilities in those frequency range there. I'm about to press the button for that in terms of submitting, and would like to thank people for very generous support across the university user base and the industry user base. I think we have about 40 letters of support. If we move to the next slide. Okay, just want to sort of say we've been doing this for a long time now. It all started back in 2009 with Green Radio, a project which I run at national, international level. We've done many projects in deploying this sort of technology, literally at the card in front of glaciers, in terms of making networks more efficient, in terms of making radios frequency agile, in terms of introducing direct digitization into those. And now we're working on a project actually sponsored through with DSTL, which is going to look at this technology further. We also have a future leadership fellowship on board in our team who's looking at this technology. And we're contributing to a wide networking space through the UK 5G, DCMS, Mobile VCE Worldwide, Research Forum, Cambridge Wireless, etc. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to just say who we are.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have the University of Surrey.
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning. This is Rahim Tafezori. I'm not putting any slides about our size or our capability and facility. I think probably it is quite well known how much we work closely with industry. I would like to just propose some ideas that we are preparing the proposals, and it is mainly based on the current DCMS funded project that we have. It's called Flex 5G. We are developing a complete Open RAN solution, which is flexible, efficient, and high-performing Open RAN. It in a form of a network in a box. It can be used for private, or it can be used as extension of the cellular networks as a private network. For high performing, we are developing massive MIMO in software for Open RAN, and also high capacity softwareized baseband, software defined radio, which covers a wide range of the frequencies, as well as energy efficiency. And intelligence that we are bringing into Open RAN is novel RIC and novel OSS for managing the Open RAN with a digital twin. Next slide, please. So these are the consortium that we already have, and we're building up on top of this consortium with other partners. And AWTG is leading this Open Flex 5G project. It's a 2-year project. Next slide, please. So what are the new ideas? We are, as I said, we're building on the new on the Flex 5G project, and divided the ideas into 2 broad categories. One is 5G Open RAN. We want to extend the coverage, energy efficient way of the Open RAN using our novel distributed antenna system. I'm not gonna go into details of that, but this is for the proposal. And also we are extending the range of our SDR to cover all the way to 100 gigahertz frequency band. So that gives the flexibility to deploy it in different environment and different architecture. The second idea that we have is towards 6G, open networking. We are proposing the ideas towards a 3D network. 3D network, which includes satellite as well as terrestrial networks, and with a common network management. And the idea here is we've chosen the ideas that we can easily influence the future 6G standards and generate lots of IPs. Semantic communication and sensing for the Open RAN, or 6G Open RAN, as well as semantic communication and sensing for the core network architecture. And that is open field to generate huge amount of IPs and influencing the future standards the way that we see that one. We already have large industrial partners and industry as well as academic partners that we are preparing these proposals. If anybody interested and can add value to these ideas, please let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Finally, we have the University of York. Is anyone from the University of York on the call?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. This is Hamed Ahmadi here. I'm an academic at University of York. So I want to briefly introduce our team and the facilities we have, our expertise, and two of the most recent DCMS projects that we are involved in. So at University of York, we are currently based in the new £35 million Institute for Safe Autonomy. And we have UAV, robotics, and IoT testing environments in this new institute. It's a big £35 million building and facilities. We have network testbed tools and equipment for challenging environments. We also have recent facilities for developing and testing privacy-preserving and energy-efficient machine learning technologies for telecommunications, and checking it with the public to see their acceptance. We have a running 5G private network SDR testbed, which is implemented for many projects. And we have, last but not least, of course, a low-altitude SDR testbed with helikites, and we have expertise of payload design and experimentation. So in our expertise, we have a wide range of that, from the physical layer design, signal processing, which is including RAN disaggregation, MIMO antenna arrays, and RAN system architecture, including unlicensed and licensed spectrum, dynamic spectrum access. We have extensive expertise in machine learning applied to telecommunications, application of software-defined radio implemented for RAN based on open source environments like SRS. And we have incorporated communication for challenging environments like vehicular and underwater systems. Next slide. And our team, our core team, is Professor Alistair Bear, Professor David Grace, myself, and Dr. Chu, who are all in the call. Next slide, please. So in Mobile Access North Yorkshire project, which is a DCMS funded project, we were one of the partners. This was an interdisciplinary 5G testbed project for the areas that are not covered in North Yorkshire, and we are providing coverage for them in partnership with some local network operators. So in this project, we designed and developed a rapidly deployable terrestrial and aerial 5G networks to provide coverage for disaster relief and temporary events. We basically, for this, we supported two main use cases: a mountain rescue use case, and an outdoor large social event. We used SDR and open source SRS that allowed us to develop this network based on 3GPP standardizations and most recent releases. Our network were self-sustained, so all using batteries or solar power systems, so allowed us to develop it in the locations that we wanted. And those who have been in the last 5G showcase remember our demo of this network connected on Helikite, that you can probably see some of the pictures on the right side, and with the Starlink connection. So we demoed it to Birmingham 5G showcase, if you remember that. Next slide, please. We are also partner in a FRANC project, 5G Devolution, which is led by ADVA UK. And in this project is developing a distributed unit platform for an O-RAN network. There we are exploiting our expertise in system-level simulation and in distributed massive MIMO to evaluate the trade-off of front-haul load and with the network performance, and influence the front-haul compression schemes. Overall, the system capacity is going to be measured, and we have the coverage probability of an O-RAN network there. So we also provide expertise for how to design and location and find the location of the DUs in the network and optimize them to maximize the capacity of the network. We will evaluate how O-RAN architecture can enhance the network cooperation and increase the capacity and the density. Last but not least, again, we'll advise on the whole consortium on how to develop toward 6G and disseminate this into different academic venues. Thank you very much and for giving us this opportunity. If the slides are shared, our contacts and our pages are on the hyperlinks on each of our names. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll now hand back over to my colleague Freddie for closing remarks. Freddie, over to you.
Thanks very much. So I actually just wanted to pick up one final question, which came into the Q&A from Howard Ben, which is what happens if no large RAN vendor decides to participate? So we've been quite clear in the guidance that in order to be eligible for funding, you either need to have a large RAN vendor as a consortium partner or as a subcontractor. So if you're consortium or if you're just a single university, you know, just you, if you're not partnered with a large RAN vendor in one of those two ways, then you won't be eligible for funding. So will the slides be shared? Yes, I believe, Josh, is that right? We're going to be sending out the slides in like a sort of thank you email to everyone. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. They'll go out later today.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who participated and who came along and to listen to us. I know it's a slightly long one, an hour and a half, but we really appreciate your participation, and we are really looking forward to seeing what you come up with to meet this challenge. We're really excited about it. We've been working very hard over the last few months to get this up and running, and I'd also like to thank everyone who has participated in the run-up to this in the workshops that we did, and has contributed their thoughts to making this work. It's been really exciting, and we can't wait to see what's going to come out of it. And the only last thing I would say is just to remember that the EOI, which is optional, you don't have to do it, is closing. Sort of the deadline for sending it to us is relatively soon. So as we said, you know, it's high level and it's not binding or anything like that. But it is quite soon. So we hope that you can get something to us pretty quickly. And can we just remind everyone of the date for that, Joshua?
Yeah, so it's the 12th of August at noon, not midnight.
Yeah, noon on the 12th of August. And the application form for the EOI is on the website as well. And actually, do you think we could, I'm just going to share, just so that you've got it to hand, I'm going to share the link to the website so that everyone knows exactly where it is. I'm going to share it here. We'll also be emailing it to you as well. If you don't have it, I'm sure you have it, but just in case. There it is. Okay. And thanks, everyone. We wish you good days and good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.